I love buying pre-owned luxury items, but there are definitely downsides. I do think the pros outweigh the cons. In this video, I will talk about the downsides of buying pre-owned luxury and how you can combat them. My name is Cathy, if we haven't met. I love talking about how to make informed choices about buying fashion and luxury. Let's get to the down and dirty side of buying pre-owned luxury. I have a previous video about how to actually purchase pre-owned luxury items, and I think you really should take a look at that. Today we're just going to talk about the downsides. In my other video, I talked about all the pros, which namely are, lower cost, the ability to purchase an item that you missed out on. I think the pros of buying pre-owned luxury outweigh the cons, but we got to talk about them because knowledge is power. Of course, the first con of buying pre-owned luxury are fakes, and fakes can range the gamut from the things you buy in Chinatown that are very visibly fake to super fakes. I actually think that super fakes are probably the biggest con of buying pre-owned luxury items. A super fake is a convincing replica that can often pass authentication. When I use the term super fake, I'm not talking about a dupe. A dupe to me is an item that is inspired by the authentic item, but it doesn't have the same branding. A replica is essentially a counterfeit item that has the exact same branding. So a Chanel dupe would not have the Chanel branding on it, whereas a Chanel replica would have the Chanel branding on it. Replicas essentially try to fool you into believing that they're the real thing. They often are made out of either the same or similar material. The quality, the touch, the feel, the smell of the super fakes are very similar, or sometimes even better than the authentic item. Quiet as kept, sometimes the employees of the luxury brands help the super fake manufacturers make it look like the real thing. When people knowingly buy fakes or counterfeit items, they're paying a lower price. The biggest problem with super fakes is that because they're so convincing, they're often sold at a similar price to authentic items. I read a statistic that said the replica industry is supposed to reach 2.8 trillion, not billion, but trillion with a T. You understand what's at stake. So how do you combat these super fakes? Well, unfortunately, it's a little bit hard. Most brands don't authenticate. If you buy a pre-owned Chanel bag and try to take it to Chanel and it's fake, they're not going to tell you. They're more than likely just going to tell you they can't service it or there's some issue. It doesn't benefit a brand for them to tell you that your bag is fake. Oftentimes people get upset. Telling somebody that their beloved Chanel bag or Hermes bag is fake is essentially like telling somebody that their baby's ugly. People are going to get combative, upset. It's oftentimes when people buy super fakes, they buy it believing that it's real. How do you combat it? The number one way that I combat super fakes is to get a lot of exposure with the brand. You can go to resale places like Fashion File and The Real that have actual stores. The exact bag that you desire may not be in stores, but a version probably exists. I can't stress how important it is to go in and actually touch the real item. The more experience you have with your desired item or brand, the more likely you're able to just know when something's off. If, for instance, you've decided I'm going to start buying up pre-owned Chanel, you need to start going to an actual Chanel retailer and touch the bags. Understand sizes, understand styles, understand colors, understand the different fabrics, understand everything. I'm not saying that you're going to be a Chanel authentication expert. I think exposure gets you to the point where you know. There are just subtle things that you probably will not notice unless you've touched the real item. The second way to combat super fakes is YouTube videos. I feel like every time that I've tried to purchase something pre-owned, I first go to YouTube to see people who have authentic versions of this item, whether it be a bag, whether it be shoes. After I've researched authentic bags enough, I do start looking at the real versus fake videos. Those are really helpful. Oftentimes super fakes have like a tell. Similar to when you're playing poker, there's something that there's just something off. On more than one occasion, a YouTube video has prevented me from making a purchase. You almost need to compare that picture with things in the video. Super fakes, always use your best judgment. If your gut's telling you that something's off, leave it alone. Maybe think about it. Watch more videos. It may sell, it may not. I just say take your time, because nothing is worse than buying something, getting it, and realizing this is fake, and then having to go through the return process. You don't want those struggles. So the next biggest con of buying pre-owned luxury items are items that aren't as described. I know a friend of mine who purchased a Chanel bag from a reseller on Instagram. The reseller had good reviews, seemed legit, the pictures were fine, the bag looked good. So my friend gets the bag, it is authentic, everything is fine except one of the quilts in the front are dented. For my friend, a dent on the front was a deal breaker. It was not disclosed to her. The person sent her videos, pictures. After she paid for it, got the bag, she realized that all the pictures basically were set up so that the dent was covered by the strap of the Chanel bag. A lot of resellers will allow you to return something if it's not as advertised, but that's not often the case. And unfortunately, this was not the case for my friend. So she was very disappointed. I've definitely learned from her mistake. I refuse to buy any Chanel bags where you don't see an unobstructed picture of the front or the back. Another issue that I've encountered with items not being as advertised are items that are brand new, but the quality just isn't there. So I recently purchased a pair of shoes from StockX. They were the Air Max 90 Bacon. Loved the shoe. So when I got the shoe had a lot of quality assurance defects. Things that if I'd have seen this shoe in real life, I would have looked at it and been like, there's too many issues. I would have left it. I can definitely tell that this shoe was a shoe that everybody else overlooked. Somebody probably picked it up and was like, oh, this is the last one. I know I can sell this on StockX or on some other retail site. My biggest complaint about both StockX and GOAT are the items that you see. They're advertised as new, but you never get to see them until you get them. In my opinion, there's a baseline of what I expect the item to look like, but what I realize is that there's a lot of inconsistencies. We've all been shopping at a store and the last item left was damaged, dirty. It was just unacceptable to your eye. So I think what happens on StockX GOAT are oftentimes people end up buying the last thing or something that was returned because it had a defect. And because it is quote unquote new, they're able to sell it. Because the item is authentic, you can't return it. I know for my situation, I did end up getting my money back from StockX, but that was just because the Air Max 90 Bacons came with 3 sets of laces. I only received 2, which was something that should have failed authentication, so I ended up getting my money back. But if it wasn't for the shoelaces, StockX wasn't going to give me my money back. Unfortunately, items not being as advertised are a big problem when it comes to buying pre-owned luxury items. Most reputable pre-owned luxury resellers do have a policy in which they will refund your money if the item is not as advertised, but that's not always the case. That to me is a big issue. So always look out for it. I think the number one way to combat the issue of items not being as advertised is to ask for additional pictures. If you're dealing with somebody that's reputable and you ask for a picture of a different angle, no problem. They might not be able to do it right away, but if they want to sell you the bag, they will get you that picture. They will get you that video, whatever you need. If all the pictures of the Chanel bag you're trying to buy have the strap laying on the bag, ask the seller, send me pictures with the strap out of the way because I want to make sure that there are no dents in the areas that I care about. Unfortunately, there are unscrupulous people who just take stock pictures on the internet and list them for sale. If you're dealing directly with the seller and they're unable to give you additional pictures of angles that you're curious about, that to me is a red flag. In addition to asking for more pictures, have an idea of what your deal breakers are. I have a friend, her deal breakers are no strip lifer bags, no structural wear, no defects on the front. On the back, it's okay. Chanel bags would come with authentication cards and serial numbers inside. If the serial number is missing, she doesn't want it, she'll pay more money for an authentication card. If you're in the market, know what your deal breakers are. Know how to authenticate this item when you get the item, because the moment you get the item, you have a very short window to verify that this item is as advertised. I think doing your due diligence with inspecting the item definitely helps combat this con. Fingers crossed, hopefully the item you get is as advertised. Next con of buying pre-owned luxury items is the return policies. Most things you buy in store, you have 15, 30, however many days to return the item. Very rarely do stores have a final sale unless it's something that's like on super clearance. There's no standard return policy for pre-owned luxury. Every reseller, retailer has their own policy. So first things first, know what the policy is before you buy it from anybody. I know for the real, handbags are often final sale. So in that situation, make sure that bag you inspect, you ask questions. If you're not comfortable with the pictures they're showing you and they're not able to give you other pictures, just pass on it. There's no worse feeling than buying something that's final sale and realizing once you get it that the back is jacked up. And when you actually look at the listing online, you realize that there are no pictures of the back. They didn't show you a picture of the back. So unfortunately, you can't say, oh, the back isn't as advertised because they never advertise it to you. Also, when you receive your pre-owned item, make sure that you inspect it as soon as possible. I know some of us get items and we waited a day or 2 or 3. Don't do that. There are some resellers that give you 1 to 3 days to inspect things. The moment you see a problem, you need to let them know. As I mentioned, I had an issue with StockX. The premise of buying things on places like StockX and GOAT is that everything is new with tags, but as I've come to realize, new means different things. And as we've seen in stores, a new white shirt that nobody's tried on versus a new white shirt that everybody's tried on are 2 totally different things. Pay attention to those return policies. Sometimes you may even want to fight these return policies. I think the biggest issue that I've ever encountered with return policies are when the item is proven fake after the return window. If you have a 7-day return window and on the 8th day you discover it's fake, there's not much that can happen. Do as much as you can do before the return window. if there is a return window. And if there is no return window, if it's final sale, do your due diligence. If you can go to a resale store and look at something, I definitely recommend it. There's a brand called Stadium Goods that sells streetwear and sneakers. To me, the pricing is a little bit inflated, but I do understand why people love them, because you get the item, you're able to inspect it, you're able to see it. You don't have any of the surprises that you get with a StockX or Go. Understand what your parameters are and stick to them. Understand the return policy for the item you're buying. I would say authenticate the hell out of it. In terms of bags and sneakers, there are authentication services that you can utilize if you're not sure, if you have questions, concerns. With luxury items, you're often spending thousands of dollars, so spending an additional $20, maybe to even $100 to authenticate something, it's often in your best interest, especially if your gut is telling you that something's wrong. I say pay the money, do what you gotta do. Knowing the return policy of the item you're buying is the #1 way to combat any return issues. And that's on period. I think my final downside of buying pre-owned luxury are buying items that have been altered. Meaning you buy a medium, they've taken it in to fit a small. This is a very big issue with clothing. I feel like there's almost an expectation that luxury items are going to be tailored. If you spent $5,000 on a blazer and it's just a little bit off, of course you're gonna get it nipped in. But when it comes time to sell it, you're not gonna say, I had it taken in 2 inches. No. What often usually happens is somebody who has maybe tried on the item in store, buys it, is super excited, gets it home and realizes, oh, it's been cut down, it doesn't fit right. This also happens with bags. People take Chanel bags and other bags that get corner wear or structural damage to like a leather surgeon, and the leather surgeon will go in and essentially treat those corners or the structural wear to quote unquote fix the bag. What often happens is a bag is listed as maybe in, let's say, excellent condition, no structural damage, no corner wear. You get the bag, it looks perfect. 6 months later, the alterations start to wear off, rub off. So you now realize that your bag is not in perfect condition, that your bag was altered. Unfortunately, there's not much you can do with it. In a lot of these situations, you don't know. Similar things will happen to a shoe. A shoe gets a scuff, the scuff is repaired, the shoe is sold to you as in perfect condition. You wipe the shoe and the repair that was made is now removed and you have a shoe that has a scuff. You can't really return it. I have heard of people that when they get a pre-owned bag or a pre-owned pair of shoes, they just take a soft cloth and just wipe it to make sure that the bag hasn't been treated with something to fix the color or to hide the scuff. I definitely recommend you do that, because if an item is advertised as being in excellent condition, but the item actually has scuffs that have been covered up, that item technically is in excellent condition. You as the buyer should know that, hey, this item has scuffs, but we've treated it, but that is often not in the listing. The buyer, that's something you should be on the lookout for. I know for myself, if I'm buying something in excellent or almost new condition and I realize that it's been treated, then that is a problem. That to me is an item that is not as advertised. I can't always tell if a clothing item has been altered until I try it on. And even if I do try it on, we've all been in a store and tried on 2 size smalls and they fit differently. A lot of luxury items are handmade. There may be some discrepancies in the sizing. There is not much you can do about that. For items that aren't in the best condition but have been doctored up to look like they're in excellent or near perfect condition, I do think that's a little bit of a problem. I understand why people do it, because they want the best price. I would rather know that this item has been repaired. That is often not the case. I think the #1 way to combat that is just try things on. Inspecting items with a very critical eye is just the #1 way. This is another area where it's like, know what your limits are. If you're okay with items that have been fixed to be more cosmetically appealing, have at it. If that's a deal breaker for you, know that ahead of time. Knowing whatever your limits are is going to help you combat items that have been altered. So that allows you to know, I don't care, or this is a deal breaker. Most people are aware of all the other cons I mentioned, but I think items that have been altered are that sneaky con that kind of come up and bite you. You really don't know what happened. Once you figure it out, you're like, oh, this item has been fixed, altered, whatever. Oftentimes the item wasn't in as good of a condition as was advertised to you. They doctored up, fixed it in order to sell at a higher price, and that does suck. There's only so much you can do. So those were the cons of buying pre-owned luxury items. As I said before, there are so many upsides to buying pre-owned luxury. I recommend it to all of my friends. Hopefully this video gave you some information to become a more informed pre-owned luxury buyer. If you feel like I left anything out, let me know in the comments. But hopefully that's it. Talk to you next time. Bye.